everyone, this is Michelle with Designs by JuJu, and in today's video tutorial, we are going to be making the Modular Seasonal Table Runner Set 1. This is a super cool design from Designs by JuJu because not only is it one table runner included within your purchase, but it's a 3-in-1. So you get 3 designs, a St. Patrick's Day, a Valentine's Day, and an Easter themed appliques, all included within this purchase. In today's tutorial, I'm going to be making the Valentine's Day table runner. There are also 3 different options for your center blocks. You could do a stippling quilt block in your center, a vertical striped pieced block, which is what I'm going to be doing, or a patchwork pieced block. The center blocks are intentionally left simple. That way you can choose really fun and decorative fabrics. These are going to be my fabrics for my center blocks. There's also a simple border block that's going to go all the way around. And then you can customize, this is really cool, you can customize how large or small you want your table runner by adjusting the number of center and border blocks. So for mine, I'm going to make it the traditional size that's on the example picture, 3 blocks. But if you wanted it longer, you could just add as many blocks as you want for that center portion. That's really cool. So within your purchase, there's a 5x7 size and a 6x10 size. I'm going to be stitching the 5x7 size today on my machines. And like I said, I'm going to be doing the Valentine blocks. Now, if you want to just stick with the 5x7, you can, but Designs by JuJu went above and beyond with this design and gave you some bonus files that are included for machines with a larger stitch field. So instead of doing 2 hoopings for that end block, I'm going to narrow it down to 1. So for the 5x7, I need a 7x12 hoop, and this is what this fabric is here for. And then if you want to do the 6x10 size, you would need a 9.5 by 14 inch hoop. So check the sizing chart for the fabric measurements that you need. So go ahead, we're going to get stitching here in just a minute, but decide right now, pick your center block style that you want, decide what table runner you want to make, and get your fabric cut. Included within your purchase is your PDF, which I'm going to be following right along with today also, and that's why I have all my material already cut according to the sizing chart. So this is my fabric for my main large block, as well as the little border pieces that I'm going to show you how to do. There's also my center blocks. Like I said, I'm going to be doing those striped pieced blocks for mine. Then we have 2 sets of border blocks. These ones go on the end and these ones go on the side. So there's more for the side pieces. So let's head on over to the embroidery machine and let's get stitching. I've made it over to my embroidery machine and we are ready to begin stitching. So the first blocks that I am going to stitch are the border horizontal blocks, and these are going to go on the sides of my table runner. I need 14 of these blocks total, and on this 5x7 hooping, there are 3 separate blocks that we are going to stitch. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead. I've got my thread loaded, and the first stitch that I am going to do on my cutaway stabilizer is going to be the placement line for my batting. Next, I'm going to lay my batting on top and run the tack down. Next, I'm going to remove my hoop from my machine and trim away the excess batting. I've loaded my hoop back onto my machine, and now I'm going to place my fabric on top of the batting, making sure that all of the stitches are covered. And now I'm going to tack down my fabric. Next, I'm going to stitch the zigzag stitching on this quilt block, and I am going to be using some gold King Star metallic thread. I love metallic, so I'm going to load it into my machine, and then I'm going to slow down the speed of my embroidery machine. Metallic threads tend to stitch best when you slow down your machine. Okay, so Here is the first block. You can see that beautiful detailing. Okay, so I'm going to load my hoop back onto my machine. Now I need to fold up this excess fabric, and I'm just going to use some paper medical tape to secure that out of the way so that I don't stitch it on my next block. And we are going to repeat the exact same steps that we just did for the remaining 2 blocks on this hoop. Once you're finished with your stitching, you're going to remove this from your hoop and set this block off to the side. Remember, you need a total of 14 of these horizontal blocks, so you're going to repeat this exact same design in your machine 4 more times, and on that 4th one you only need to stitch 2 of the blocks. You don't need to stitch this final one because you just need 14 total. All right, let's go to the next block. Now that we've finished our horizontal blocks, we are ready to do our vertical border blocks. So I already have my cutaway stabilizer hooped onto my 5x7 hoop, and these are going to stitch identical to the horizontal blocks. So this hooping has 2 vertical blocks in it, and we need 4 total. So we will repeat this exact same hooping 1 additional time. So I'm going to go ahead and run the first stitch, which is going to be the placement line for my batting. Next, I'm going to lay my batting over the placement line and run the tack down stitch. Next, I'm going to remove my hoop and trim away the excess batting. Now I am going to lay my background fabric on top of my batting and run the tack down stitch. Just like on the horizontal blocks, I am going to load my King Star Gold Metallic for that decorative zigzag stitching. Again, I'm going to slow down the speed of my machine for my metallic thread. I'm going to lift this fabric, fold it out of the way, and again use my paper medical tape. And I'm going to repeat those exact same steps for an additional block. I have just finished stitching my vertical border blocks, and I am going to repeat this exact same stitching 1 more time so that I have 4 total vertical blocks. Now we are ready to stitch out our center stripe block. Now for my table runner, I am making 3 blocks in my center, but this is where the customization options are really limitless, because with these modular table runners, you can mix and match any modular table runner that's available on Designs by JuJu to customize and make it your own. So there are tons of options available. Within this set, within Modular Table Runner 1, there are 3 options for your center block. I'm doing the stripe one, like I said, but again, if you go out to Designs by JuJu and type in Modular Table Runner, we'll also have it linked down below in the description box, but there are tons of different center block options that you could choose to make this one of a kind. Also, if you want to make your table runner longer or shorter, you simply just create more of these center blocks, and then you also add 2 extra of your horizontal border blocks. So we're ready to go ahead and stitch our center stripe block. So again, I have my cutaway stabilizer hooped, and we're ready to do our first stitch. This is going to be a placement line for my batting. Okay, next I'm going to lay my batting on top, making sure all of the stitches are covered, and I'm going to run the tack down for my batting. Next, remove your hoop from your machine and trim away the excess batting. Next, I am going to run the placement line for my center fabric. Next, I'm going to tack down my center fabric, making sure that all of the stitches are covered. Okay, next I'm going to remove my hoop. I have quite a bit of excess fabric here, and I'm just going to trim that with about 1/4 of an inch around it. All right, the next stitch is going to be the placement line for the top fabric. Okay, I'm going to place my fabric. Here's my fabric, right side facing down, making sure to cover that entire placement line. Smooth it out, run the tuck down. Okay, now we're gonna flip and fold it. So we're gonna flip our fabric over and fold it, press it nice and tight on that seam. And now it's going to tack down the corners, the edges, all the way around, all sides. We're gonna repeat those same steps for the bottom fabric. There's the placement line. Again, take your bottom fabric, place it right side facing down, and tack it down. Flip and fold again, so flip it over so your right side's facing out. Fold it, so press the seam and tack it down. The next stitch is going to be some decorative detail stitching, so I'm going to be using some red King Star metallic thread. The main part of the block is finished. We're ready to add some border detailing. So the first part is going to be my placement line for my fabric. Okay, next, take my fabric that I'm using for my border, right side facing down, and I'm going to tack that fabric down. Okay, we're gonna flip and fold again, so it's gonna flip towards you on this side. Fold it down, and now we're ready to tack down all edges. Keep your fingers out of the stitch path. And repeat these same steps on the other side. All right, here's what that completed block looks like. So this is the 3-stripe one. Like I said, the center stripe. So I've got my 3 main fabrics in the middle, and then I've got my 2 border pieces that coordinate with my main block, my main applique block that I'm getting ready to do next. So I'm going to repeat the same exact block 2 more times for my table runner. Again, you can customize this. If you want your table runner to be longer, you can repeat this same block as many times as you need. So I'm going to remove this from my hoop, set it off to the side, and we'll be ready for our final blocks. We are ready to stitch our first combined block. This is going to be our main applique piece with our table runner. And like I said, I am doing the 5x7 size. So for my machine, I have a Brother Stellaire. So I have the capability for a larger hoop. For the 5x7, you need the 7x12 hoop. So I have my hoop already loaded with some cutaway stabilizer, and I am going to be stitching the lock. So I've got my pink thread loaded. The first stitch is going to be the placement line for my batting. Okay, next I am going to place my batting on top of that placement line. Smooth your batting out and run the tack down stitch. Okay, now that I have my excess batting trimmed, I'm ready to run the next stitch, which is going to be the placement line for my main background fabric. Okay, there is the placement line. So I'm going to lay my main background fabric. I've got this pink and red striped, and I'm just going to have it overhang that placement line about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch, and I'll trim on this side. Smooth it out. I did go ahead and apply some SF101 to the back of this for some added stability for my applique work. That is optional, but it really can help keep your fabric nice and smooth and give it a little bit of durability. Okay, we're ready for stitch step number 4, which is going to tack down this fabric. Next, we are going to do some quilting motif stitching, some background stitching onto our main block here. And I'm going to be using this Sulky Poly Sparkle. If you've watched any of my tutorials in the past, you know that I am a sparkle metallic specialty thread lover, and this Sulky Poly Sparkle just really adds some shimmer and shine. You can see that sparkle throughout it. I love using these especially on my quilting motifs and my backgrounds because it really helps the blocks pop. So I'm going to load this onto my machine and I'm going to slow down my speed and we will stitch the background. All right, now that we have that, we're going to stitch the small border trim around my main block. So the first stitch is going to be the placement line along the bottom for that border trim fabric. So we just stitched that placement line right along here. Now I'm going to take my fabric right side down and I'm going to line it up with that placement line. And then it's going to tack it down and I'm going to flip it forward towards myself to attach it. Okay, so I'm going to put this back on my machine and we're going to run that stitch. Okay, now you're going to take this fabric, fold it towards you, press it down with your fingers, and then I'm going to run the tack down, which is going to secure it in place. Okay, we're going to repeat those same steps for the side border pieces. Okay, the remaining stitches on this block are my decorative and my applique stitches. So I'm going to do those off camera and then we will check back in to see what it looks like at the end. All right, I have just completed my 7x12 combined block and here's what it looks like. So I've got all of my applique and detail work in the middle and you can see that border trim that we did as well as my main fabric in the center. So now we are ready to move on to the assembly portion of the video. Now that all of our blocks are stitched, it's time to do a little bit of prep work. So the first thing I'm going to do, you can see I've already prepped some of my blocks. I tend to prep them as I go because it just saves me a lot of time at the end. But the first thing I need to do is trim away my excess stabilizer. So I'm just going to fold all of my fabric forward and I am going to cut, making sure not to trim any of the stitches. I'm going to cut away that excess stabilizer all the way around my block. Next, using a straight edge ruler, I am going to cut a 1/2 inch seam extra all the way around this block. It's a 1/2 inch from the outer stitching all the way around the entire block. And I just like to use a rotary cutter and a straight edge. I find that's easiest for me. Okay, so now that I have all of that done, I have my 3 center blocks, my 2 main applique blocks, and then I have 14 of the horizontal border blocks and 4 of the vertical blocks. I also have my backing cut using the supply list that's included within your PDF. So I am ready to start assembling my modular table runner. Okay, so I have a basic outline shown here that I want you to see before I start stitching. So we are going to work from the left side of our table runner all the way down, creating strips of equal length. So the first thing I'm going to stitch together is my vertical border blocks right here on this end. And I am going to stitch these 2 blocks together to make them an equal length. Next, I'm going to stitch 2 of my horizontal border blocks together. And I'm going to do the same on this side so that they will be an equal length to my main block. And then I will stitch these to this and this side to this side. Okay, if you didn't have a larger hoop and you created this in 2 pieces, you would stitch one half of it to each of these and the other half to these. Okay, and then I'll keep working my way down. And here's my center block. So I'll stitch one center block with one horizontal border on this side and one horizontal border on the other side. It will make much more sense when we get stitching. But first I'm going to start with my first vertical blocks. Okay, so I already have these laid out the way I want them. Okay, so we have our outer stitch lines here that you can see. This would have been the tack down line for my fabric. I am going to line up those stitches. I'm going to fold this one forward so that I have right sides together. And then I'm going to look right here at these 2 stitches, and I'm going to just line them up the best that I can. You can see I've got them lined up pretty good. So that way when they're sandwiched together, they're lined up. Those stitches stay lined up. So then using some quilting, some sewing clips, I'm going to secure these 2 pieces together. And then I'm going to take it over to my sewing machine and stitch it. Okay, so when I go over to my sewing machine, I'm going to stitch right on the inside of this outer stitch line. So this one was my batting placement and tack down, and this was my fabric placement and tack down. So I'm going to stitch right inside that fabric placement line. Okay, so let me head over to my machine and we'll do that now. All right, I've got my sewing machine set up. So now, like I said, I am going to run a stitch right on that inner line, and I always like to drop my needle first right where I want it at so that I know it's going to stitch it in the correct spot. And then I'm just going to run a quick stitch. And if you've done this step correctly, there's what it looks like, nothing too fancy. When you flip it from the front, you will not see any of those original stitches. They're now stitched together. Okay, so we're going to continue this process. So these are my 2 vertical strips that I stitched together. Now I'm ready to go on. And like I said, since I did the combined block, I need to go ahead and stitch 2 horizontal blocks together first so that they are an equal length to my large applique centerpiece. Okay, so I've just stitched together 2 horizontal blocks for this side, 2 border blocks, and 2 horizontal border blocks for this side. Now I'm going to do the same process that I just did where I put them right sides together, and I'm going to put right sides together here, line up my seams, right sides together here, line up my seams, and I'm going to stitch right inside that line just like I showed you. Press your seams open. That makes it lay a lot nicer before you stitch it. And then when we're finished, we'll have one larger block. Okay, so I just stitched this together. So I have one large block here, and then here's my 2 vertical border pieces. So you can see how we're starting to make blocks, some strips of equal length, so that when we stitch this all together, it will be much easier. So now I still need to press open my seams on those 2 pieces. Now we're ready to do a center block. So again, I've got my center block and 2 horizontal border pieces, and I'm going to do the same thing. Flip and stitch, flip and stitch. Make sure you are paying attention to your border pieces so that they are facing the direction you want them to be. Okay, so you can see I've got my 2 vertical pieces, my main large block, and then my centerpiece that I just did. So now I'm going to repeat these exact same steps with the remaining center blocks, the second applique large block with the horizontal borders, and then my last 2 vertical border pieces, and then we'll be ready to stitch this whole table runner together. I'm going to start attaching them. So I'm going to start sewing these strips that are equal lengths together to create my table runner. So I'm going to first start with my 2 vertical that I stitched together. And again, check your directionality for your your borders because you want them to line up. So I'm going to take this first piece and I'm going to fold it forward and stitch it together. And then I'm going to work my way down. And so with my center block, I'm going to do the same thing. And I'm going to stitch it on top of that. And I'm going to keep working my way down the table runner till I have a full table runner, all of my strips stitched together. My table runner is all stitched together. So here it is. So now I need to again press open my seams and I am ready to add my backing. Okay, so I have my backing cut to size according to the supply list and the cutting chart within my PDF. So now I'm ready to pin my table runner to my backing. And I'm going to take mine actually to the floor so I have a little bit more room and I can spread it out. But I wanted to show you what this looks like. So you'll smooth it out and you just want to use some sewing pins to secure this table runner to your backing. Then once you have that step complete, you are going to again, using your straight edge ruler and a rotary cutter, cut your backing so that you have 1.25 inches around all sides of the table runner. This will help you as you do your binding. Now I will do my binding off camera, but there is going to be a tutorial linked below for how to do a mitered corner, as well as there are very detailed directions within our PDF that you can follow also. So we will check back in once this table runner is complete. My modular Valentine table runner is now complete. I completed my finishing binding using the tutorial that will be linked in the description box below. And now I am ready to put it out and display it this holiday season. I hope you have enjoyed today's tutorial and make sure to check out the Designs by JuJu blog for more tips and tricks on how to make your own modular table runner. Also, make sure to join the Designs by JuJu Blessing Facebook group for more ideas, tips, and tricks, as well as tons of inspiration from our awesome supporters over there. There's also freebies posted very frequently, so make sure you check it out and hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you next time.